Good morning. Welcome. So, raise your hand if you're here. Okay, we've taken attendance. That's a good thing. This is sort of boomy, isn't it? Like, we'll work with it. So, my dear colleague Barbie and I are looking forward, and Marjorie's coming later. So we're going to just kind of start scrolling through. I'm too far away. Is this okay?
In between.
In between? Okay. Tech. We're doing tech. It feels poppy, though. All right. Thanks for being here. So we're going to kind of just move through some slides. Barbie's going to play a Bach Prelude and Fugue for us this morning. So we're going to get there before too long. And here we are. And so we have live performances every week. How many of you have been in this class before? Yeah, great. How many of you have had music lessons of any kind? Let's narrow it down. How many of you have been in choirs? How many of you have had piano lessons? How many of you have not had piano lessons? That's okay. Yeah, there we go. So it's fine. All comers are welcome because you can retain as much as you want. In fact, if you're getting notes and taking notes, I suggest you make a page called TMI. You know what that means? Too much information. So you don't have to let it stick. You can just let it wash over you and not even worry about it. Or you can ask some questions. We'll try to include that. And there are so many wonderful things. I think of this course more like a piano lesson for 35 people, in a way, or whatever number we are. Because every lesson is different. Even if you had 30 lessons during the school year, every lesson is different, but the information, I call it a spiral of learning. You circle around and here's that piece of information about rhythm, and here it is again, rhythm, and here it is again, rhythm. But it's different every time because it's a deeper thing. So we're always deepening. And so spiraling up and deepening our musical experience and our love for music, our appreciation, maybe even some understanding of music. So we have every week, not every week, everybody, but I'll be playing. Emeritus is a disease. I'm pretty sure I caught it. And here's Barbara, dear Barbara, such a great colleague, wonderful pianist. All of you know Barbara and love her. And Marjorie will come about 10. She's teaching a piano lesson. Now, we could just go watch her teach, and that would be a piano lesson for sure. And then Chris will come, and we are doing Pianissimo in October, so we'll have a float in the parade, and there's lots of great information about that, so probably we'll have some two-piano things the days before Pianissimo happens. That's where we have 5 pianos on stage, and every student plays. Barbie and I and all the faculty play. So that's all coming up. So that'll be the more with smiley faces. So today, Barbie's going to play briefly, soon, I don't mean briefly, but soon, shortly, for our listening pleasure and our musical learning experience. So today, we're doing a little differently from last year for those of you who were here. Last year, I tried to do a whole day of Baroque and a whole day of classical and that kind of thing. But it felt like we shouldn't ever do it the same. Every piano lesson's different, every Molly course is different, and it felt like we should enjoy sort of the spectrum. So today we'll do sort of part of the spectrum, and each week we'll have more than just one style. So Barbie will play Bach, Marjorie will come down at 10, and we'll do a piece by Mozart for piano 4 hands, and then I'll do a beautiful etude that I want to talk to you about some fun things that I know I've never talked about in the Molly course. So that's part of your TMI part. So that'll be fun to think about. And then as time permits at the end of our 90 minutes, we'll do a little preview for next week. So we have here Bach. And from last year, for those of you, what does Baroque mean? Who remembers Baroque? Baroque is a word that describes not just art and architecture, but also music. And it's just a term that's applied. It's sort of the catchword of the time. And if you look at 1600 to 1750, not even Bach could live that long. So he came in halfway through it, kind of. And when he died in 1750, in a way, everything is always changing, right? Every day the weather changes. We almost lost all our dahlias this morning, turned on the sprinklers at 5 a.m. So everything from 1685, Baroque was full-blown by then. So Bach was born into the Baroque time. So there's Baroque architecture, there's Baroque art, there's Baroque music. And so we'll review some of those things that make it, and Barbie's going to share some thoughts for your listening in a few moments. And this will be for you. I have to ask a question. How many of you don't have to say yes or no, you did it, but how many of you can review these at home, the PowerPoints? I highly encourage it. I won't say even recommend, but I encourage it because it'll review or renew or bring up questions or just anchor some things that otherwise are sort of elusive. So it's not it's going to be on video, right, Ron, in a few days, and everybody that's in this course can just go into the share file and then download the PowerPoint, and hopefully it'll play something like this, or it may just play the whole screen, each of the screens at once, each of the slides. So this will be what Barbie's going to play for us, and it isn't the whole piece, so I'll kind of point where she is in the music, but you can just listen. If you don't read music, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're watching the score. Okay, so that's coming up. So here we're going to not do this right now. I think we'll have Barbie play because she has some things just to listen and feel. But I do want to remind, if you were here last year, there's something happening in the Baroque time, and it had a name. In German, it's Affektenlehre. Affekten means emotions. Lehre means a teaching or a principle. So the principle of emotions in the Baroque time, it was actually a thought, not just a piano lesson or a harpsichord lesson. And it was for composers and also for listeners and for musicians in ensembles, that each movement or piece, not a whole big piece, but one piece, like from start to finish of one item, would be in one spirit, you could say, one emotion, one character, whatever word you might use. So that's a Baroque principle. So once the piece begins, it's not going to change. It might intensify and relax a little bit, but it's not going to change into different themes and different things. It maintains itself through the whole prelude and then again through the entire fugue. There will be a character. So maybe without Barbie necessarily saying what that character is, as you're listening, you can think, what is the character of this piece? And then why does it make me feel in a certain way? So it isn't just character like for the piece, it's character for your listening. And if it's a wonderful, vibrant spirit, you should feel that spirit in your bones. Does that make sense? It's just there, and you receive it. And so the idea, it had a little bit to do with medical thought. Dr. Swick can help us with this. He'll correct me after the course if I'm completely off. But there was in the time a thought of what they called, what is the term? Temperaments, let's say. There's the sanguine. I'm told that I'm like a huge percent sanguine, which is sort of friendly, but be careful. There's the other side. No, and then there's melancholy, and there's phlegmatic, and there's choleric. Those are the four basic medical fluids that pervade our health, not just our bodies, but our health. And so there was something of a thought that if music was changing up all the time, it would actually disrupt the flow of your fluids, your temperaments. And so you should pay attention to whichever temperament you'll receive in the prelude, and then you'll have maybe a different character in the fugue. And you just sort of move into that, and music is healing. Music is very impactful. And so you receive music, and it doesn't matter what style it is. it isn't that the Baroque was correct and everything that came after was wrong. It's just that that was the thought of the time. And there's one more thing, and I learned it in my first theory class at Oberlin at the conservatory, and it was the idea of Affektenlehre, the doctrine of affections. Put it down on your TMI list, and then and it'll come up on your review. So when you go home, we can't go over the whole PowerPoint in the class. That's why I suggest you go deeper and refresh it at home. And so then the other part of this is something called Fortspinnung. Fortspinnung in German. In English, spinning forth. So once the piece begins, it sort of not only maintains character, it maintains the quality of motion. So you're going to hear that the prelude that Barbie's going to play for you is very energetic and fast feeling. And so that vibrant rhythmic energy maintains throughout, and that is called spinning forth. And it also had to do with how composers would write a whole bunch of 16th notes for 10 measures, and they kept spinning. You can't just do a whole bunch of middle C, da 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 da. You know, you have to have a melody or a counter melody or a counterpoint, it's called. All kinds of too much information, but you get to receive that Fortspinnung, and you'll feel it in the fugue, even though the rhythms, and Barbie's going to talk about that, the rhythms are so interesting, so it isn't just that the notes just spit out like BBs, it's just that it maintains its rhythmic patterns, kind of that idea. So that's a spinning forth. Those are two really great concepts to put on your TMI list. All right, so let's hear.
Okay.
Barbie is going to talk. You have a microphone or need one. I'm going to try to move this from my mouth. You guys can help me, you know.
Can you hear? Is it on? Let's try now. Is it on?
Closer to your mouth, probably.
Okay. Music often consists of melody, rhythm, and harmony. And in this prelude and fugue, I will use this prelude and fugue to show you some of the elements. This prelude and fugue is short, but it's monumental. It's one of many preludes and fugues that Bach wrote that are in every key, every major and minor key, and it lays the groundwork basically for how to compose music. He was a master at the form fugue, which is more than one melody playing at the same time, but I'll talk about that after we do the prelude. So what I will demonstrate in the prelude is the harmony out of melody, rhythm, and harmony, because one of the important things of harmony that the organs do all the time is they'll play a really low bass note, and they'll hold it down for a really long time, and then they'll change the harmony of the chords, but they'll keep the same bass note. So I want to give you a little bit of a Bach saraband that's from one of his English suites that uses a low G, and I'll try to emphasize that so you'll hear that. This is an example of pedal point. A pedal point is a note that's held throughout many changes of harmony, and it just enriches all of the different chords that you'll hear on top of the bass note. So this is the this is the pedal point. Now this is an organ, and the sound does not decay on the organ. It just keeps blasting out really loud. So there'll be a few measures of just harmonies of chords that fit with the G, and then it will resolve to D. So we have, and then it resolves to that. Okay. Did you hear that G, how it was held down for most of the time, and then it resolved into the D major chord? That's an example of a pedal point. Well, in this Bach prelude, he was playing harpsichord or what other instruments besides organ did Bach play? He played the harpsichord. I know that was his favorite. Pianos were just starting to be invented, and Bach wasn't crazy about the pianos at that time.
He would have never taken this course.
So instead of holding down the low G, since that's impossible on a harpsichord, he keeps repeating the note C sharp for many measures, just a few measures, and then it goes to a G sharp. So we have, this is in the key of C sharp. C sharp. Okay, and then after a few measures, it'll go to G sharp. So let me show you. This is, if it were pedal point, it would keeps it in your ear so that you know that's the base of the chord that would be the pedal point if there was one. So, all right, so a prelude is sort of an introduction to something more important. But in this case, the prelude's just as important as the fugue. So here's the prelude in C sharp minor, the C sharp major. Now we go to the fugue. Did you hear the harmony of that piece? How it goes. It's sort of a variation on those harmonies. Now with the fugue, I'd like to talk about melody and rhythm. We have melody, rhythm, and harmony. Most music has that, unless it's modern music. But a fugue is more than one voice, usually a minimum of 3 voices. Now think of 3 people, each one has a voice. Now imagine if each of them talks, but they come in one right after the other. So first person talks, and then the second person talks, and while the second person talks, the first voice is still talking. And then the third voice starts talking. And while the third voice starts talking, the first 2 voices are still talking. So you have 3 voices talking all at once. And usually they harmonize with each other. It makes sense. It's a conversation. And the very interesting thing about fugues by Bach is that each one really is a voice. And if the voice is silent, he indicates it in the writing of the music by putting rests where he tells you not to play anything. And that's very different from most music, because if there's nothing to play, usually they don't put anything there. But with Bach, you can literally follow all three voices all the way through. You see at the very beginning where, in the first measure, he has a whole rest underneath the beginning of the melody, and also in the bass he has the whole rest. That means there's two voices there that are being silent. They're not saying anything.
Would you all keep silent, please?
Yeah. So that's basically all I want to say about the melody. The melody of a fugue is called the subject of a fugue. So the fugue comes in, highlight the first subject. Okay, that's it. All right, now highlight at the end of the first line, you'll see where the second subject comes in, where the C sharp, see where that is? Yeah, that's where the second subject comes in. And then if you go another measure and a half, you'll see the third subject comes in there. Okay? Okay, so that's the melody of this fugue, the melodies of this fugue. Now the other thing is the rhythm. When I was a little girl, my mother played the violin, and I grew up in Missoula, so she was in the symphony when it started, and she was always going over to the grade schools, helping the kids learning violin and other string instruments. And one of the things she was learning was the Bach double violin concerto. And there's a place that Bach highlights the offbeats. You know, an offbeat, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Early jazz.
I'm clicking the offbeats. Well, there's a... Have you heard that before? That's the violin music, but it's a... Well, there's a little sort of rhythmic element in this fugue that's similar. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then the second voice comes in. And then the third voice comes in. Hear how the offbeats sort of get you? And I know even when I was a little girl and listening to this recording my mother had of Heifetz, Jascha Heifetz playing the Bach double violin concerto, both parts. And it was my dancing music. I just loved to dance. I heard those offbeats, but I wasn't aware that they were offbeats, but it was just jumping around dancing music to me. And I loved it so much, and I still do. It's one of my favorite pieces of all time. So, listen to the fugal entries. There's 3 subjects. All of his preludes and fugues for keyboard instruments have a minimum of 3 voices, and then some have 4 voices, and some have 5 voices. And they're absolutely masterworks, and you can never tire of studying them. They're an endless source of great pleasure, in my life anyway. Okay. All right, so here's the fugue. It's a 3-voice fugue, and the melody and the rhythm is what I want to try to bring out.
Also, I think maybe character as she was doing that would be, for me, something like jolly. You see what I'm saying? So there's a character, and it maintains.
Could you turn one page for me?
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere down this Now I'm starting with rests. 1, 2.
So maybe from you guys, so what were your feelings, your characterization for yourselves as you listened to this prelude and then the fugue? Fugue, by the way, comes from a word. We have the word fugitive in English. Fuga, or fugare in Italian, is to chase. So the fugitive is running and the other guys are chasing. And so the fugue subjects are chasing each other around. So there's a definite use of a word that means something other than just a title. So thoughts on Baroque? Anything? Something? Nothing? Yes, Jerry.
It was fun to watch Marty play. And you could see her kind of jumping up and down, on the happy parts. And then when it became serious, she, just her posture became serious.
So she reflected the doctrine of affections in a way, and the characterization. Anything else? You ready for the midterm exam already? So it's just such great music, and 150 years of Baroque forming, and then it continued in effect after Bach, but when he died in 1750, he was considered the apex of all that is Baroque. Here's something, I said it last year, so you might check back on your notes, but you could write it down again. It's just a good thought. And it's not anyone's quote that I know of, but I heard it, read it, felt it, and this is an idea. So if all the Western music, not indigenous Indian Native American music and not Chinese music perhaps, but all of Western music, if it all disappeared except the music of Bach, you could recreate everything from that corpus of music, everything that came before that led up to Bach and everything that came after, including jazz. For example, Bach's harmonies, this harmony is very clashy, but it's also very pretty when it goes to the, so if you, theme from The Young and the Restless soap operas television world. And so he knew those harmonies back then, and so you get this wonderful prelude, a different prelude, the first prelude from Book 1. And there it is. So harmony came in, and in the 1600s especially, there was a settling of harmony. And Barbie was mentioning harmony. She disappeared, oh no. It's Fortspinnung, oh yes. Drink of water. No vodka, please. Okay, not yet. Okay, so where was I? Anyway, yeah, the young and the old and the rested. That's what I feel like. Okay, not at all. So that's great. So this is just a taste today, an overview, bird's eye view of styles. And so let's see if we go on a little ways. So when Bach came in and the harmonies were settled, in 1722, you could write it down, a guy named Jean-Philippe Rameau, maybe it was 1723, wrote a treatise on harmony. So harmony was settling in, and when we have harmony, we have a progression of chords like, what if it was, there'd be no harmony. So, and Bach knew all those harmonies, and Jean-Philippe Rameau. And in Eastman School of Music in the 20th century, they were still using the Treatise of Harmony as a reference from 1722. So functional harmony means that each chord has a function. It kind of leads to the next chord or comes from a previous chord. And all kinds of wonderful things could happen once that language was settled. So we have, Barbie mentioned it, we have major and minor keys. Tonality is the name for when we have a scale of different keys. And there's one note that is home base, one note that you always return to, one harmony that is underlying everything. And there are all kinds of things that happen as a result, and when we don't get to go through these in class here too deeply enough, that's when you go home and you can go to your computer and review in a couple days. This PowerPoint should already be up and running. So, okay, so then we're going to just kind of skip ahead. But I talked about the doctrine of affections here, and then Fortspannung, the spinning forth, perpetual motion. So those are maybe some keeper thoughts for you in thinking about Baroque, just some helpful things. And at home, it's very emotional music. You could feel it, like Barbie was peppy when the music was peppy, and she was more serene and flowing. Music is always about flow. We're going to skip ahead a little bit, but I do want to show you one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, and it's called polarity, or that's at least my name for it, polarity. And on our planet, we have the North Pole and we have the South Pole, and in between we have all the latitudes and longitudes. But there is something about the North Pole and the South Pole that create a magnetic arc or a magnetic field. And so in music, there's something similar. And I was playing just a little bit of this. So if you take the bottom note, whoops, that I circle of the left hand, and you guys know that we have a left hand and a right hand that we're dealing with up here, and 10 fingers, and then you take the top note of the right hand, you have sort of the South Pole and the North Pole. And if you go from measure 1, which a measure goes, as you know, right there, and then there's something called the bar line, and then measure 2, and then measure 3. And so measure 1 goes into measure 2, and the bass notes, or the left hand, stays the same, but the right hand goes up. And then in the third measure, the right hand stays the same, but the left hand goes down. And then in measure 4, and Barbie would be happy, I'm sure, to do the PowerPoint. So you get the idea. So if you had, and I remember one time in an earlier Mali class, I brought a bungee cord. So pretend you have a bungee cord. I think we passed out rubber bands, and some of you passed out, and then we thought maybe that wasn't a good idea. So if you had a bungee cord in the first measure, you're going along, and I'll do it like it would be in front of you guys. So here's these two notes, bottom and top. South Pole, North Pole, and then you go to the next measure, and the right hand goes up, but the left hand stays the same. And in the next measure, the right hand stays the same, but the left hand pulls down. And so you feel how that could be an imaginary pull. And when you hear music, you hear that as part of the musical energy. And bass lines became totally important in the Baroque time. It wasn't just the bottom of a chord or the part of the harmony, it was also its own thing. I think it's because the cellists and the bass players wanted something to do, play some interesting music. So that's just an interesting thought, and that's called polarity. So this you can go through at home, and so this is our left column of things to think about. And they're not the only things, but they're helpful things. So you can look at that in your own at-home online share file. So here we see very ornate. Baroque actually was used as a title because it comes from an Italian word that means grotesque. Yeah. So it doesn't really apply to music. Maybe the musicians are grotesque, but the music should always be wonderful. So here we have, see how ornate that is? And this was a time where they dressed up. Maybe they wanted a little more lavish life or something. And in their world of architecture, churches and office buildings and even business buildings. This would be a church, maybe, but maybe not. But look at that rose kind of circular, maybe stained glass window in there as well. It's not Notre Dame, but it's Baroque architecture. And then here's Baroque art, and it's fancy. Kind of. It's not pure and simple like classical came to be, kind of a throwback. So we're moving ahead now a little bit today, and this will be when Marjorie comes down. Maybe we'll come back to these slides because we're going to play some Mozart for you. And Mozart's at the heart, let's not say the apex, but at the heart of classicism. And classicism are clean lines. If you look at architecture, I didn't take pictures, but you can look through Wikipedia. I always enjoy seeing what they have to say, and they'll show pictures of classical architecture. And that's a throwback to Greek and Roman even, but Greek especially, clean lines in the architecture. And music in Mozart's time became very clean and elegant simplicity, not too complex, not too thick, less ornate maybe, but still ornamented and totally great music. So we'll come back to that when Marjorie comes down here in a little bit. Here's a couple names in the highlight there. Polyphony, I used to say polyphony, but polyphony and homophony. Let's say it together. Polyphony, polyphony, and homophony. Homophony. And like homogenized milk is when everything is made to be the same. Well, in homophony, you have melody and accompaniment. And that Bach could do it too, but especially by Mozart's time and Beethoven and Haydn. In Bach's time, you have polyphony, which means many voices or many sounds. Everything is a line, everything is a voice, everything is chasing itself around. But in classical times, this is a big deal because the world was thought of differently. And music came out of that in a kind of a, well, we've always had melody and accompaniment because somebody's playing the guitar in 1500 in Spain and they're singing to their partner in life or their love of their life and doing a serenade. And so there's always melody and accompaniment, but it became a thing in classical times. And we're going to play a duet for you, and so you'll see this is just kind of fun, but this picture, I think, depicts the joy of duets. You know, they didn't have CDs, you know, they had musical instruments, right? So after the evening meal, Mozart, Wolfgang, and his sister Nannerl would get together and play duets. And Dad, who was a great musician, would make sure they did it correctly. And Mom had died before this portrait was done, so they had to make a picture of a picture to include Mom. She died in Paris in 1778, which is why they know this portrait. It's an actual painting of the family, and Mom is included in the mirror, or the portrait there. So a fun thing is that one way, you know, everything was very carefully supervised. You know, there were no curfews because you weren't going out to the movie at 10 o'clock at night. You were, you know, if you wanted to visit your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, you could play duets at the keyboard, and then there'd be a place where Mozart would write this very clever, well, I can't really flirt with you, but I think I can put my right hand over your left hand and kind of let you know that I'm interested. So it was, music was not only musical, it was social. Does that make sense? So people were just, it was a communication between friends even, and it still is. So we're going to hear this piece in a bit on, see if this will work, I hope. Recognize the familiarity of this piece. Now, this is classical style, so very much a melody and an accompaniment. So, if you're hearing a little bit of what's happening in classical time, there's a vigorous opening. Dum, bum, 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 bum. And that's all just outlining a chord. I mean, it's just a dumb G major chord. But to Mozart, it was way more than that, because it's leading on to other great things. And it's very vigorous. And then you have this lovely da, 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 bum, ba, bum. And that is intentionally not just the same character all the way throughout. constantly and formally changing up the textures from vigorous to lyrical to gentle to a different key. Life moved on and music moved on, and they thought, well, who decided that you should have only one character for the entire movement? And so movements started becoming longer. You could have a 10-minute first movement instead of a 3-minute something. And the idea was a little bit that all these contrasts not just kept your interest, but made it interesting and made it musical. And it became a system of vigorous and then lyrical and then going to different keys and all kinds of interesting things. And so music was moving on. Now, just the last point of this is that this is the same piece. And the point, a little bit of hearing, just the opening of this is what Marjorie and I will play for you in a bit. And the idea is that nobody had a symphony in their home, right? So if you wanted to enjoy a great piece by Mozart, it had to be in a piano keyboard solo or maybe just 3 instruments or whatever. It got pared down a little bit so that 2 pianists could enjoy the piece. Franz Liszt in later years, not that many later years, took all the Beethoven symphonies and arranged them for piano duet. Because they still didn't have recordings yet. If you wanted to experience the Beethoven symphony in your own home, you had to make it happen, right? So piano lessons were at a premium, I guess you could say. So this is just a touch of what we'll play for you later. Whoops. Okay, we'll hear it later. I just have to get rid of that. This is why Bach would have never taken this course. Or we could just sit here and relax and decide what the character of that is. We get rid of this. There's always a solution. Finding it is another thing sometimes. So, going back. Slideshow. Current slide. No. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so you'll hear that later. And here is the interesting thing to just consider quickly. This was Mozart's piano, basically. And we have, here we go, we have a model of this upstairs in room 205, but they're having music theory up there. And so this forte piano, they called it, to distinguish later, called the piano forte, had, you can see there's no pedals. It was kind of like a harpsichord. But interestingly, the pedal was hidden underneath the ledge there. And your knees would operate, and you could do the top part of the piano for duets, and the person on the left could control their own pedaling. That was kind of clever. And it wasn't that many years later, and this is all kind of leading. How many of you have been in Vienna at the great Schönbrunn Palace? We'll have lunch there next week. Who's buying the airplane tickets? Anyway, so this is all the classical things you can review at home and think about, and we can think together. But here's kind of interesting. This is Mozart's model of his piano. He loved the Stein piano, and you can see up there it says Stein, 1786. Mozart died in 1791. So this was basically his end of his short life instrument. And then after that, you still have, and this I have to get close to see the year, 1795, so Mozart had been gone 4 years when this instrument came out. And Beethoven, these are a collection of Beethoven's pianos that he was either using or knew or wrote music for. And so finally, in what year, 1803, and maybe that isn't the exact year, do you see the pedal coming in? So this is affecting music, totally. Okay, so now we're gonna, and you can review these at home, and it got more and more elaborate, and Beethoven, in fact, his deafness, many of you know about that he became totally deaf, but over time. And so some of the piano makers would make pianos that would just have 4 strings on every note instead of 3 so he could hear it better. And so there was an interesting thing that his medical or personal condition affected people because he was so important and so famous that the instruments were sometimes beefed up for him, for his health reasons. So we're going to move on. Look at this. That's from last year, not from 1800. I wasn't here then. Yeah. Anyway, so then we're into the romantic time. Now I'm going to move ahead in my PowerPoint here because you're going to discover how talented and smart you all are. Whoops. And I'm not proving myself like this yet. Here we go. Okay, so this should get us there. Okay. So now I have a job for you to do. You're going to count with me. So first we're just going to do it. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, join me, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Beautiful. I didn't hear you really well. Your vocal production wasn't that great, but thank you for participating. But now a lot of times music, and Barbie hinted at this, it won't start with 1, it might start with 8. So if you go 8, 1, you're jumping from the end of one phrase to the beginning of the next phrase or the continuation. It's called a pickup or an upbeat or, and then we'll get to the term in a minute, but let's all just go 8, 1. Can you do it kind of with your hands? 8, 1. 8, 1. So what you're doing is you're practicing when the conductor goes like this and the orchestra comes in and she goes 8, 1. Something like that, right? 8, 1. So music doesn't stop with 8 and then get to 1, like connecting dot to dot pictures, but it's flow. And so if you go 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4. Join me with that kind of emphasis. 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Okay, that's important. And so now we're going to clap it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and show something on the 8, 1, 2, 3. So there's an emphasis, and there's a lead in, and so that's important. And so we're going to now do what happens in piano lessons, at least in my life and my students. So here's your 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so now just you gently join me. And you see how I made the 1 bigger and the 5 bigger? So there's sort of 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. So now you're starting to practice flow and phrasing and pulse and expression and musical expression. So I'm going to play for you, and I'm keeping a little track of time here. So Marjorie's coming shortly, so I'll get through this etude first. So 8, 1. 8, 1. 8, 1. 8, 1. Isn't that pretty? It's just beautiful phrasing and a beautiful melody. And so when he wants to express something, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5's a different note. 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the 6, 7 is somehow a subsiding of the energy. All the energy from 8 to 5. 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can you feel it sort of resolve and settle back on the 6 and 7? So you don't have to see the music to know that, but I'll try to review this next week because it's going to be kind of a heartfelt principle for the whole course. And so sometimes in my piano lessons, the music grows and then subsides. The phrasing builds and then it glides. So you can sing along in your heart. The third phrase flows the same. I didn't use the darn way. But now the music takes us back to start all over, back to the same first phrase. So it's a way of not calculating how music is, but it's something I learned in a course called Eurythmics, and it took a year to learn what I'm telling you in 2 minutes. But I'll just leave that there, and I'm going to play this etude for you. And I think I'll just get this out of the way, so if I have a little expletive, you can delete it. I won't say darn. Okay. Hi, so my friend Marjorie is here, my friend Barbie's still here. You're all still here. This is amazing. And you hear Marjorie's wonderful Alabama and Georgia laugh in the background. Anyway, so what did you feel in this piece? Not hopefully 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but that's in there. Anything of the feeling of the piece? Yeah? Yeah, thanks. It's really it's in a way its own Fortspinnung. The pattern is established. What you hear is this melody, but in between everything that's happening, here comes the different note. Harmony changes. Now he adds a different note there earlier, and now he goes. So every note matters, and every note has to be expressed, and that's what piano lessons are all about in college. And I just have to share quickly a former student of mine, and Gary and I and her college roommate from Jesse Hall from 40 years ago. We had 4-hour lunch together in Seattle a few weeks ago. And she said, you won't believe, and I do believe, how my piano lessons from my teacher before you and my lessons at the University of Montana prepared me for a career in law. And she said, we went into such depth at every lesson, and when I thought I finally had it, then you took me to another place, and then she won the Great Falls Concerto competition and all. And then she became an attorney. And she's great, and she said, every little detail is what I do every day that I practice law. I have to know everything about the case if I'm presenting. So here's what she said. So she said, it wasn't just my lessons, but I learned to read my audience. If you all get up and leave, I'll get a message. and she said, I could hear my people when they were listening. Just the whole room, everybody was inhaling the same time and exhaling the same time. We had become one in music. And she said, when that happened, I just couldn't help myself. Something I never even thought of doing in the music was suddenly the next thing I did because we were all experiencing the music together. So here's what she said. So when I'm doing closing arguments, if I see a tear in the corner of one eye of one juror, they're mine. Anyway, so we'll come back to some ideas about the Chopin. That was Chopin's great harp etude, and I want to get a couple slides. But Marjorie's here, and we're going to find a second bench somewhere. Piano bench, or, well, okay. We're both of, oh, wow. Well, I can have this chair. I'll just have it. I think we're good. So this is Eine kleine Nachtmusik. Now, what's interesting about this, well, they're the right height, so we'll do it. So what's interesting is that Mozart wrote this in 1787. So what year did he die? 1790 what? 91. So 4 years before he died, he wrote this piece. It sat in a drawer till 1827. Isn't that something? I didn't know this. Wikipedia or something. And so in 1827, his widow, Constanza, sold a number of pieces to a publisher, and the rest is history. This is one of the great pieces of the literature. And so he didn't arrange it for piano duet, but he could have and might have, because that was the thing to play the piece without an orchestra. This is Marjorie. And she'll be back many times, and when she's not teaching, she'll be here. So you're going to... eine kleine Nachtmusik. So Mozart didn't call it that, he just put it in a catalog. This is just a little bit of night music. Isn't that interesting? It wasn't a title, it was just on his directory of his pieces. Okay? week we'll do another movement, and then another movement, and then another movement, and then you'll all be gone. So Marjorie's, so Barbie and Marjorie, so wonderful to have them as colleagues and pianists, and Barbie and I played the Mozart duet for two pianos, also for two pianos at the duo. Anyway, so what did you feel with this music? This is classical. Oh, sorry. I'm either too loud or too soft. Usually too loud. Okay, so yeah, John. Oh.
They didn't go as far in range as the really exuberant openings.
That's interesting. So what we would call in classical style the development, maybe after the repeat, then you're into the next section, which sometimes is very expansive. In Beethoven, it's like another whole symphony. So this was like economy, kind of economical. Interesting. Yeah. What about the spirit? Was it only one character, or were there changes, lots of changing up? Yeah? Yeah, for sure. Any other comments? Can you see how this would be an evening entertainment in a home that didn't have CDs and stereos and radios, you know? I mean, that's what you did, and it was just the greatest joy. And there's one place where Marjorie and I are sort of fighting over the keys, and that's where the...
I have to really fight for my territory with him.
Oh, my gosh. Oh. Well, there you go. So it's sort of like, can be flirtatious, or, you took my note there. And, well, okay, I'll see you later. Let's have a cocktail at 10 o'clock. I'll meet you at the bar. Anyway, so music was social and not just musical, right? Yeah.
Fun. All right. See you
All right.
next week.
Back to your lesson? Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
One other quick question. You mentioned this was found in a drawer in 1824.
Yeah.
How was it first scored when Mozart wrote it?
You know, that's
Was
a
it scored
really
for-
good question, because it's all, like, you'll hear the string orchestra, the Rockies play it.
Mm-hmm.
That's as opposed to the Rocky String Orchestra, which is kind of rocky. And no, they're great. And so it was originally scored for two violins, first and second, a viola, a cello, and a bass, 5 instruments. That's a great question. You probably already knew the answer. And, oh, you didn't? Yeah, a really good question. And so it got, well, had been gone for 40 years or more, well, not quite 40 years when the score was sold to a publisher. And probably, I don't know how it was first published. That's a IMSLP thing. We can look it up. But it was quickly adopted for only strings. There were no flutes, no oboes, no anybody other than just strings. So it made perfect sense for it to become a wonderful part of the repertoire for string orchestras. Great music, though, isn't it? I mean, it's just so, you know, it's just as I said, it's just a G major chord. Like, but it, this particular version of G major leads to this and back to home. So even Mozart knew that I'm not going to go. He could have, but this. And then the other chord. So when I was talking earlier about the Chopin phrase, and we talked about this a lot last year, and you'll go over it as the weeks go by here. They'll go by pretty fast, and we're hoping we'll get some more flowers. Any other thoughts on this, though? So those leaning notes, the chord that is done in the second, that's just that other chord. So in a way, that's the purity of classical style. It's not fussy in a way, but it's profoundly elegant, simple, vibrant, and perfect. Perfect. Mozart was so perfect that this is a great thing to know about him, that if you look at his manuscripts, I don't even know if there's even one correction anywhere. Beethoven was fussing, no, that's not it, scratch, scratch, I'll work it differently. Oh, there it is. Mozart just received the music almost from heaven, right? And he just said, I don't even know how it happens. I just hear the whole symphony in my head, kind of all at once, and then I can write it down later. Something like that. What a genius. So we're so privileged to have the music of Bach and the music of Mozart, the music of Chopin that you've heard now this morning. And let me get to some little things here before we wind up today. So I'm going to go back if I can get there. So this is a piece. I'm going to try to play it if we have time for you this morning. But this guy, he died in 2023. He was born in 1923. He was still playing up until the day he died. So keep signing up for this course. And I hope to be here still playing for you at age 99 or something. But here he is at 89 years old, and I'll just play a little bit of it for Menachem Pressler. Great pianist, Indiana University, his career. Chris Hahn, got to meet him in person, I never did. Now, one reason I like this video is I don't think I look quite that old yet, so by comparison you could say, oh, Steve, whatever. And age doesn't matter because age, I think, is wisdom, hopefully. And so we all aspire to play like this guy. Raise your hand if you know this piece or know it. So this is why you should really go home and listen to your PowerPoints. And I'm going to work with Terry and Michelle because I couldn't make the sound work when I uploaded it last night. But we're going to go over that and make sure you can listen to these beautiful recordings of wonderful musicians and this wonderful music and just steep in it. And if you don't go through all the little details, that's kind of, if you want to go deeper, you may go deeper. If you're in too deep already, you can shovel your way out, I guess. But this is such great music, and this is a piece that will kind of help us go today. We are Baroque, classical, romantic already, Chopin, and then this is like 80 years later almost, Debussy, French. And so it becomes Impressionism shortly after this piece was first written in 1890, and it came in 1905. His publisher said, you know, Mr. Debussy, you are becoming something, and you should go back and revisit that piece, or that whole set of 5 pieces, and maybe you want to adapt, and maybe you want to edit, and maybe you want to revise a little bit, but they're beautiful. You were already a very promising young composer. And so now you can, in 1905, we're crossed over into the 20th century, so already we've gone from 1722 to 1905 today. Does that make a little bit of sense, even if it's just a quick journey? I have the feeling that this course is going to be easier to teach than I had thought, because I think I'm just going to use these same PowerPoints for 5 weeks because there's so much more. So what I will do next week is kind of, I think, come back and review some of the points. It'll be sort of like what I really meant to say last week, you know, and didn't. So there's such rich information. So I'm going to play this for you, the beautiful Clair de Lune from the 1905 version. I'm not even sure, I've read one place that they're not really even sure of the 1890 version in its authentic original version. So whatever changes he may have made came in 1905. So, great, beautiful piece. Some think overplayed, but I just think it can be played over and over. It's just great, beautiful music, and every time I play it, it's a little different. Does that make sense? It's never the same twice, because in a way, we're talking musically with our fingers as pianists, and so if we speak, as Barbie mentioned, the voices in the fugue, right, that you are representing the voice when you play at the piano. And so just as music must breathe, just as singers breathe, music must flow in all forms, whether it's voice or it's instruments or it's orchestra or it's piano. So some thoughts, how does that piece seem a little different? It's moving out of the Romantic era. It's still in the Romantic vein, very emotional, but also starting in something that we'll talk about more next week. Yeah, please. When you're listening to it? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Just don't stop. Other thoughts? Any? It's just, it's the simplest thing, just a little hint of what we're going to be talking about. So. So just like Mozart, using two different chords, here's the D flat major chord, and here what should be an F sharp diminished, which is very different from, diminished means smaller, and so all the notes are scrunched together. And now he used, now that is a different harmony. This one is diminished. This one is called dominant seventh, which is the chord that leads back home to D flat major. So the piece is in D flat. So what I'm really trying to share, and I don't want to run out of time, run you over late here, 3 minutes, maybe time for another question. But the idea is that harmony is a language. It's not just something interesting to do and write, oh, I think I'll write that chord. So the composers that know their harmonies will know how beautiful it is to go from here to here. And then here's a little different. Now, I can tell you this because it's true, but yesterday I told one of my colleagues at the university here that the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad engines, the engine is a half diminished. And it's purposely a little bit out of tune. I would say it's purposely out of tune because you have to be able to not just have everybody sound, oh, sweet, and you're standing on the railroad tracks. It's kind of a warning, Doesn't that sound right, though? And sometimes you'll even hear them, and that's a different upside-down version of this. So somebody in the railroad business said, wouldn't it be lovely to do a D half diminished seventh chord for the horn? Anyway, but I digress. But that's some of the fun, like some of these things that are real down the street, right, just across the river, is this chord. So if they had a flutist on the train, they could use that horn to make some music, and that could be the accompaniment. Any questions, any thoughts? Yeah? Which keys? Oh, the piece. You know what? I really am serious that I'm going to come back to this PowerPoint next week because it's a great question, and I'm just going to get there real quick. This is the Aeolian harp, the actual Aeolian harp. It dates from 5th century BC. This one was not. These are strings played by the wind. You see, nobody's playing that instrument. And so the Aeolian harp was an instrument played by where the strings were activated by the wind. And now, oh, damn it. Excuse my darn it. There. Now I know how to get rid of that. You learn from your mistakes, right? Or you just keep making mistakes. Okay, so listen to this Aeolian. Oh, come on. There it is. So that's the Aeolian harp. So this didn't really, Chopin didn't call it the Aeolian, but somebody probably said, it's just like the wind was playing those notes on the fingers. So that's the Aeolian harp. So you can listen to that at home. And then, so it got a nickname. The harp etude is also called Opus 25 number 1 to be exact, and it's on your midterm next week, so you have to go and study. And here you'll hear 2 beautiful performances of the piece. So I'm not going to do it now, but you will at home. And Michelle and Terry are going to help me make sure that all the music's embedded in your PowerPoints. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Yeah.
I've been listening recently to a number of things that have been done of jazz kind of music that is trying to raise money for farmers.
Oh.
And that's noble. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see any beauty in it at all. Is that my problem?
Well,
That
that's
I
when-
haven't moved into the.
Well, that's when you send money to ask them to stop playing. And it still helps the cause. Well, you know what? Next week, Marjorie's going to play some pieces of one by Duke Ellington and another one by another composer, and it's going to be on her recital in March, I believe.
Maybe you could bring me a.
And we're gonna talk about some of those harmonies. Because when in jazz they're doing this harmony like, let's see if I can get there. I know you'd rather hear the train. Oh, wait, where's it? But this. So. So all these notes from the dominant 7th chord are become part of this. There it is. And it's called normally you'd get this note, but even Ravel and even Chopin and even maybe Bach did it. He did everything. And you take out the defining notes. You hear that every day on morning classics. But if you take out some of the notes, you get this, and then you add this little, and oh man, that's so cool. And you get the blues, and you get all kind of stuff. And so that's its own history, and I'm not qualified to teach it, but I can at least suggest some of the ideas. Yeah, I think we're at time, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Yes. If you have other questions, I'm here. You can help take down the stage while you're asking the question.